Hello, everyone. So, when I was researching the previous two podcasts about the scandals at West Point, I came across another incident which involves West Point and also the U.S. Naval Academy at Annapolis, Maryland. And the incident revolves around an organization called United American Patriots. This is an advocacy group that supports veterans, many of them that have gotten in legal trouble or that need help otherwise. And the CEO of this group is Lieutenant Colonel David Goffin, somebody that I know. I know of him. Unfortunately, we haven't served together, but an infantryman and a good guy. And they had approached the Army Navy football game and asked in the game handbook that's given out to all the fans and stuff for a page about Major James Capers, who they're advocating to get the Congressional Medal of Honor. And I'll go into that. Major Capers served in Vietnam. And since then, there's been a bunch of Marines and congressmen that have been supporting for him to get the Congressional Medal of Honor. Nonetheless, so Vice Admiral David at Naval Academy and Lieutenant General Gilland at West Point decided no, because they already had plenty of corporate sponsors. They didn't want to give UAP a page in the handbook, in the pamphlet. And so I stumbled upon this story, and it just blew my mind. I mean, so here we've got the two academies that are supposed to talk about honor, courage, and commitment are really deferring to corporate sponsors as opposed to, highlighting somebody like Major James Capers. And when you find out about his background, it's mind-blowing stuff, right? And so they made the wrong decision here. And consequently, 23 some congressmen wrote to them, and they come up with some bullshit excuse that although they admire Major James Capers, they didn't have the room in the pamphlet to be able to accept UAP's offer. That's just bullshit, in my opinion. Now the problem is this: because Major James Capers is a very, very unique individual for several reasons, and I'll go into that here. He was born in the Jim Crow times in South Carolina, a sharecropper's son. And, 3 generations removed, his great-grandfather was a slave. And so he decides to, like many from the Deep South, decides to join the Marine Corps and goes in the Marine Corps infantry and deploys to Vietnam, like many did in those days. But he was a really standout Marine and volunteers to become a reconnaissance Marine and joins the Force Reconnaissance Company in 3rd Marine Division. And him and his team went on several missions, like 50 combat missions, many of them behind enemy lines. They rescued POWs. They recovered sensitive materials from a B-57 that went down. They rescued a Marine's body from behind enemy lines in a river, and then they were supposed to go out and attack this regimental NVA regimental base in a place called Phu Loc. Now, it just so happens I've been there during my time when I spent traveling around Vietnam, and pretty tough terrain there. So the story goes of this incident at Battle of Phu Loc was the regimental base had moved from where it was supposed to be. So this team Broad-Minded, which Capers was in charge of, gets counter-ambushed. So they'd set up these claymore mines around their perimeter, and they're fighting out the enemy, heavy fire, and everybody's doing what they're trained to do. Team about 8-9 reconnaissance Marines, and one of the machine gunners ends up losing his leg. The leg comes off. Everybody's wounded. They had a dog by the name of King. He was killed in action. And Capers calls in for an emergency extract. So a helicopter H-34 comes in. They fight their way back to the helicopter. They load all everybody's wounded. And so everybody gets on. Capers is the last one to get on. And the helicopter's too heavy. It can't generate enough lift. Capers jumps out of the helicopter and says, tells him to go, because he wants to save his Marines. And the crew chief reaches out, grabs him by his H harness and yanks him back in. The helicopter's still throttling. He tries to get out again. And finally, a gust of wind comes along and the helicopter lifts up, takes off, and lands where the hospital's at. They all get, obviously go in for medical treatment. to take care of their wounds. Capers got a busted leg, and the commanding general, Major General Hookman, comes in, and he's just mind blown by this whole story of what these Marines had just done. And every one of them was wounded, and they're able to extract themselves without loss of life, except for King, the dog. And Hookman hears about Capers and tells him, I'm going to put you in for a Congressional Medal of Honor. What so happens, a month later, a helicopter crash happens, and the commanding general was in the helicopter, and he gets killed. And by the way, he was the only general officer that was killed during the Vietnam War. So, so Capers' award is awarded the Bronze Star for this for his actions. And he's already got multiple Purple Hearts, so they give him a Bronze Star. And the reason they get the company commander gave him a Bronze Star was the company commander of the Silver Star didn't want Capers to have an award higher than himself. So he gets put in for a Bronze Star. Caper comes back to the United States. Walter Reed, the Secretary of the Navy, is walking around visiting wounded sailors and Marines, and comes along Capers, and he's kind of shocked because in the interim, Capers had gotten a battlefield commission, the first African American to receive a battlefield commission from staff sergeant to second lieutenant. And the Secretary of the Navy is kind of surprised to see a black second lieutenant and Marine officers. He asked the question. He goes, "How come we don't have more African American officers?" And everybody gives him that salute. We don't know. So he said, "Well, we need to use Capers for recruiting." So the Marine Corps goes full bore into the recruiting side of this, and starts highlighting Capers and posters and advertisements and whatnot. And there's a great poster, I'll put it up, where Capers is standing there, looking sharp. And the real story is he's hurting bad because his busted leg is all messed up. He's in serious pain and he's ready to pass out. But through grit, he's standing there getting his picture taken, doing his job, what he's told. And the story goes, there's a Marine behind him, and the Marine whispered to him and said, "Hey, sir, you just stand tall. I got you if something happens." So that camaraderie's still there.
Recognition of his acts of valor, Capers is selected to become the face of the Marines. Still recovering from his wounds, the photo shoot was a challenge.
And I could hardly stand up. My right leg had been broken. I've been hit pretty badly. And on occasion, sometime when I would stagger, a Marine would come up and stand behind me and say, "It's going to be okay, sir. You can do this."
And anyway, so Capers, gets back into the Marine Corps, serves in, not only served in 3rd Force Reconnaissance, 2nd Force Reconnaissance, but also 1st Force Reconnaissance Company. So, and for those that don't know about Force Recon, in those days, Force Recon was akin to the Navy SEALs. Same type of mission profile and same type of toughness that these Marines had. And later on, then finally, they've become part of MARSOC and what we call now Marine Raiders. So, Major Capers was one of the first 14 people inducted into the U.S. Special Operations Command Hall of Commandos, and he was one of the first ones. So this guy is a legend in the Marine Corps by all means. So in 2008, his package comes back up for review, that he should get the Congressional Medal of Honor. Right around that same time, there was a movement afoot to remedy the right for a lot of the African Americans that didn't get duly recognized for their combat awards for a variety of reasons. And so Capers' case comes up, goes to the Pentagon, and several general officers had written recommendations and whatnot, and the Pentagon downgrades it to a Silver Star without any explanation. So, he gets awarded a Silver Star. Well, the Marine Corps and, groups like UAP and several congressmen didn't stop advocating on his behalf. In fact, in a National Defense Services Act, his Congressional Medal of Honor was put as part of the record, but somehow or the other, by the time it got signed, that whole thing was pulled out, and nobody knows what happened there. Nonetheless, so UAP is an organization that's been advocating on his behalf. He's in his 90s now, for him to be able to get this Congressional Medal of Honor. And I just find it, disgusting, quite frankly, is probably an understatement, that the Naval Academy and West Point wouldn't give Major Capers the due recognition at an Army-Navy football game. I mean, you got to be kidding me. We should be promoting, highlighting our war heroes, so the younger generation can aspire to be them, just like I aspired to follow in the footsteps of Major Capers and many other Marine officers, I'm sure, because he was a legend when we were second lieutenants. And we need to put these heroes up on a pedestal, but we don't anymore. We defer to corporate sponsors. I mean, that's not who we are, And instead of wanting to make a buck, let's focus on the future generations of cadets and midshipmen and the audience that are sitting there, that young kid that hears about Major Capers and reads a story about him, because these people were making the ultimate sacrifice to jump out of that helicopter, so your own Marines are saved, is mind-blowing to me. That is selfless leadership. To be there in these firefights, 50-some combat missions that he did behind enemy lines, is a huge sacrifice. But we just sort of discount that for corporate sponsorship. I mean, Admiral, Lieutenant General, bad decision. This is not who we are. We recognize our heroes. And, unfortunately, heroes is a term that we just throw around loosely. You show up to work, you're a hero, No, these are the real heroes. And so, I consider them to be superheroes. And Capers is one of them. And it's a great disservice. I applaud organizations like UAP that is advocating on his behalf. And I do hope that he does get the Congressional Medal of Honor soon. And I also hope that the Vice Admiral at Naval Academy, she learns a lesson, and also the Lieutenant General up at West Point. I hope you learn a lesson from this also. This is not who we are. We're far better than this, and we recognize people that make sacrifices and live up to the words that you espouse in your academies: honor, courage, and commitment. That's who we are. That's all I got. Stay rugged. Khan out.